Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. And we're now going to be talking with Kaamila Knight-Morake. She's a social auxiliary worker at Islamic Careline, and we're going to be talking GBV. And when I was setting up this interview with Islamic Careline, the one question I put to Shuhaida Adam was, does it mean that it's the Mubarak month of Ramadan that GBV comes to a standstill? And we know the answer to that, don't we? GBV doesn't recognize time, day, night, week, month, or year, and doesn't even have respect for the month of Ramadan. So, assalamu alaikum to you, Kaamila Knight-Morake. To begin broadly, how do we define domestic violence today, and what forms does it take beyond physical abuse?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah for having me on your radio. When we look at domestic violence and when we define domestic violence, we need to remember that domestic violence and GBV differs in a way because domestic violence happens within a domestic or intermediate relationship. So therefore that can occur between a husband and a wife, ex-partners, family members, and whereas GBV, it occurs within a male and a female. So it can be you and your neighbor, it can be in a workplace, but domestic violence is with people closest to you. So it happens that GBV and domestic violence, both of them, they occur in physical abuse, they occur in financial abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, and we have seen these cases here at Islamic Careline. I've seen we have quite a lot of them happening in our Muslim community.
And I would be correct in saying that domestic violence doesn't respect the Mubarak month of Ramadan. If you are in a relationship, in a gender-based violence type of relationship, or you are a victim of domestic violence, be it physically, emotionally, psychologically, verbally, whichever form it takes, it doesn't stop during the month of Ramadan. And that is very sad, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is very sad. And during the month we should be fasting. It's quite a holy month for us. We see a lot that, men and women are losing their tempers. Mostly men. It's the smallest things that triggers them. There's a lot of arguments that is happening. Then it escalates. So it's stopping the domestic violence. That's not argument. Matter of fact, it is occurring more because people need to be able to control their nafs, but any small thing can trigger because someone doesn't know how to self-regulate themselves during this month especially. So yes,
Astaghfirullah. Astaghfirullah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us guidance and patience, inshallah. From your experience, Kaamila, at Islamic Careline, how prevalent is domestic violence in our communities? And would you also agree that it seems to be hidden? We know it's happening, but people kind of sweep it under the carpet.
No. You know what, Islamic Careline, the cases that we deal with, such an important question. I just want to brief you into the cases that we kind of deal with. We see physical abuse. And when we talk about physical, you may think that people are coming in with big bruises, maybe I know it doesn't happen that it's that major. It's basically a woman or partner that will be saying, my wife pulls my hair or my husband pulls my hair every single time. They push me till I lose my balance and fall. So it's those physical. When you talk about the physical, that is if they threaten me, if I do this, this is what they will do. So it goes so much beyond. So therefore, we'll see like with the physical abuse, those are the cases that we are dealing with. And, then we get the emotional abuse. And that's the worst. That's the worst because the emotional abuse and the cases that we are seeing is basically women who mostly who are reverts and have been in Islam not so long, men taking that opportunity to basically abuse them. And tell them
Okay,
this is
I
Islam.
I would like to come in there, and I don't want our listeners and viewers to get the wrong impression, very especially new reverts to the Deen and people contemplating entering the Deen. Let's let's kind of rephrase that, because we don't want people to think that if you revert to Islam, you are going to be in an abusive relationship. And that is not necessarily true.
No, absolutely not. And I don't think that's the message I'm trying to relay basically. What I was trying to say was basically that's some of the cases that we are experiencing. But that being said, it's not the only case that we're experiencing. We will basically see people that are experiencing emotional abuse, whereas there's emotional blackmail within spouses. So yes, we do see those kind of cases, and then financial abuse, whereas a man or a woman uses their partners without them knowing, and them later finding out when they really in need of it that their money was used a long time ago. Another thing that we do see basically is cases where women basically pressurize their men unnecessarily to basically use money and put them in financial strains. That's also a form of financial abuse. So yes, we see all of that, and then obviously within our cases as well, our cases do go beyond where married spouses sometimes do experience cases such as sexual abuse while being married. So yes, our cases go beyond. So domestic violence is quite broad.
Absolutely, I can't agree with you more. I'm aware of very, very many such cases. But let's go for an ad break, and when we come back, let's look at some of the early warning signs of abuse in relationships that individuals or families should be aware of. But all of that and more after the break.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
It's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best.
us on this wonderful 6th day of Ramadan. You are listening to Inspired Afternoons with me, Julie Ali, and our guest is social auxiliary worker at Islamic Careline, and she is Kaamila Knight-Morake. We are talking domestic abuse, and Kaamila, I'm not sure, is it Kaamila or Kaamila? Kaamila. Okay, Kaamila, what would you say are the early warning signs of abuse in relationships that individuals or families should be aware of? And then at the same token, how do power, control, and emotional manipulation show up in unhealthy relationships, even as you indicated right at the beginning of the interview, when there are no visible injuries to show for the fact that the person's being abused?
Okay, so, the warning signs that basically occurs earlier will be when your partner is extremely jealous or they feel like they're quite possessive over you. It can escalate and lead to domestic violence. And mostly when they also isolate you, you get cases where your partner feels like not allowed to go to your family, you're not allowed to your friends, and they control you in that way, that you're only allowed to see them. Therefore, that also escalates later in stages steps. Those are also just like the early signs. And at first, it does sound friendly. It does, look like, okay, he's trying to protect me. But then later on, it just keeps getting worse. Controlling finances. You're not allowed to buy this. First, show me what is that. No, they're basically controlling all your finances. And then, as I've said earlier, and I've mentioned earlier, basically the threats also. Mm-hmm. At first, it can be used as a joke, but if it's continuous and more often, those are the early signs, and later may lead to domestic violence. Another thing that really does play a big role is social media. Within partners, people have their own social media platforms and accounts, and the partners that constantly want to see and monitor their phones and what's on the social media, those are also signs.
A lot of people, carry on.
And I just want to say that may escalate over time to physical harm.
Okay. A lot of people struggle to leave an abusive relationship. It could be a man or a woman. We know that men are also victims of gender-based violence and also domestic violence. So in a situation, one of the partners struggle to leave the abusive relationship. Mm-hmm. What do you believe are the emotional, social, and financial barriers commonly keeping the victims trapped?
Okay. So the victims may not want to leave an abusive relationship. Firstly, because they fear that the perpetrator may retaliate and even cause further harm. But when we look at that, it's not even like you are afraid to leave and you need to leave. But mostly there's hope. Mostly victims have this in common with they hope that the abuser won't change. They hope that the abuser, they say that I know this person. I've been with this person. He said he'll change. And they have that hope. There's nothing wrong in having hope. But the hope is not the problem. The problem is that this person is not changing. And the longer you stay, the longer you give him the power, giving her the power.
And I guess one of the signs of hope would be if the abuser or the perpetrator agrees to go into therapy, because then you will know that he or she is very serious about saving this relationship.
Absolutely, 110%. But most of the time, you get like where they just speak and there's no action. I think that's something that victims really need to realize that when they say that they will, but there isn't action, or the action comes once off. And that what we have seen is that the emotional attachment or trauma bonding that happens between the victim and the perpetrator. They have this trauma bonding towards the perpetrator. It is very difficult for them to leave a situation that's quite dangerous for their well-being and for them. And in most cases, spouses where domestic violence is happening have children, and they do not want to leave because they don't know how they're going to take care of themselves, who's going to support them financially. They just stay within the relationship and continue for the sake of the children.
So they're trapped in a very vicious cycle. Now, in the context of Islamic marriages, how is domestic violence sometimes misunderstood, minimized, or perhaps incorrectly justified?
I think incorrectly justified and womanized. So when I say incorrectly justified, we'll see that between spouses, most of the time, when you do look deeply into a perpetrator, we realize that these people, they don't know how to regulate their emotions. They don't know how to take care of themselves, and they just lash out. And when they lash out on their victims. And the victims are always the people closest to them. And this continues and becomes such a vicious cycle that the children or whoever they live with, mostly the children, they witness this. And later on, when they grow up, they repeat the same cycle.
So, Kaamila, let me ask you the all-important question. I did indicate that the spouse or the perpetrator should, the only way you know that there's going to be a change in this relationship is that if he or she goes for therapy. But you talk about self-regulate or regulating the emotions. Will that be addressed in counseling? Is the person given tools in how to regulate their emotions and their feelings and their anger, etc., so that once they're through the counseling, or counseling might even go on for a very, very long time, but at least they have the tools to be able to self-regulate. And as a social worker, would you from the bottom of your heart say, yes, it can and does work?
Yes, I can say that. Yes, it can and does work. So basically, when you do come in for therapy, and this is something that you're struggling with, we do try to understand firstly where it came from. In most cases, it will be from your past. Things that you've seen your mother, father do or witness, and you have had that trauma and you come out of that environment, but you don't know any other environment, so perpetuate that. We do help our clients to self-regulate. We do help our clients to find alternative ways to communicate and to get a message across. It doesn't always have to be through violence. You can always find different ways. And we help also, when we do have spouses that most of the time, probably let's say the man feels frustrated that the woman is not listening. We do help women to be able to understand and listen to a man without interrupting, and the man also to be able to listen to the woman without interrupting, and good communication and understanding each other and finding better ways as well how to be in a relationship and to basically love each other without any violence occurring. So we always try our best with that. So sometimes, people have gone through so much violence that therapy is very, very good for them. So yes, we do recommend therapy, and it has shown basically a positive outcome at the end.
Let me ask you this question. I'm sure you've heard it over and over and over again. When the man says that it's her fault, she made me do it. How do you respond to that? Because they want to absolve themselves of all blame. and they kind of say it's her fault because she shouted at me, or because she ignored me, or because she was cheeky towards me, I lashed out and hit her. So it is her fault. And then also family members often, and it kills me when I hear this, often say she deserves it because she keeps triggering him. And now, as a social worker, how do you respond to such drivel like that? What do how do you address it when the man says that to you?
So, it's so important that, when you hear that, and we hear that a lot, that it's her fault, she made me do this, the blaming the victim. And women, first of all, what we do need to realize is that women are emotional beings. They are emotional beings. They go through a lot of emotions, but that doesn't give you the right. There is no excuse on earth for a man or a woman to hit their partner. There is no excuse on earth. Therefore, when we do hear that, we always try to understand that what you retaliate that way. Why not speak to her or do it in different ways where if she does scream at you, try to understand that what was the cause of that screaming of her? What did you do that made her scream like that? And in that regard, we do hear maybe a woman saying, I've been repeating myself a million times, you didn't listen, and it got to this point. Or there's so many other examples where they feel like they've done and they've spoken or they've just gotten to this point. But then a man also, and it's not only a man, but I think because the studies have shown that basically most domestic violence is when men hit women. So that's why I'm using the word men. But it occurs in both cases, with a female hitting a male and a male hitting a female. So when we do see those cases, we do also to men and try to help them regulate themselves. That there is something deeper than that. That it's not the fact that it's her. And in most cases, as you have said, that the family kind of blames the woman that, yes, if she didn't do that, it starts right there. That the support system is broken.
Okay.
So if the family is basically helping also the man to say, you are wrong. The change comes right there.
All right, we need to wrap up now, unfortunately. For anyone listening in who may be experiencing domestic violence, what message of hope, support, and practical steps would you like to share? But if you can, keep it short and sharp, please.
Okay. So basically, I first like to say, it's very important that you constantly open up cases or have protection orders, because if in a case whereas you are basically having to go to court, you have a record that you've been opening up cases. So most of the people are very scared to open up cases or have basically protection order against your perpetrator. It's very important to have that. And then leaving. It's not just as easy as saying you should just leave. There's more to it. It's very important that you learn and you reach out and you educate yourself exactly how you need to leave and how you will leave. But it's also very important that you do leave if you are in a domestic and abusive relationship.
Okay, that's where we're going to have to leave it. Thank you indeed. That was Kaamila Knight-Morake, Islamic Careline social auxiliary worker, talking to us about domestic violence. It's exactly 4:00, and our next guest, our final guest on the show today, Inspired Afternoons with me, Julie Ali, is Alida Fenter, and she's got something really interesting to talk to us about today. So please do stand by.